Hi, everyone. This is Ray of the Fashion Pulpit, and welcome back to another episode of The Power of Swapping. And you all know that we are running a series where we go outside Singapore and talk to different individuals or organizations who are building a swap communities in different cities across the globe to learn their stories and get inspired. And for this specific episode, we are taking you to Tokyo, where we will be talking to Diya, who is the founder of Swap Stories Tokyo. Hi, Diya.
Hi, Ray.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about swapping, the things that we both love.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy to be here. Like I was saying, I really love your podcast, and it's so great to, see that there are so many other swap enthusiasts around the world. So I'm excited.
Same here. So let's jump into the conversation. Can you tell us and share us the story of like how did you get started? How did you start clothes swapping in Tokyo?
Mhm. Okay. So it actually all started with what we call in Japan a sayonara sale. So that's basically, when you're leaving a house or you're moving house, moving city or country. In my case, it was country. So actually, I'm from India, and I moved, to Japan about 2 years back. So in the process of moving, so that the move happened because I got a job in Tokyo. So in that process, I realized so I had to move from my regular sized house, Asian house, to like a tiny apartment in Tokyo. So I think that process really made me think about all the clothes that I had accumulated over the years. And I was like a online shopping addict in India. So I had really accumulated a lot of clothes, and I had to sort of give them away. So I had a little sayonara sale kind of thing for my friends, and I just called them over, and that whole process, it really made me think about first the amount of stuff we just accumulate, and also how amazing it can be if you can pass it on to someone who love and use those things. So that's how it all started.
So it was first a secondhand sale that you did.
Yeah.
How did it transition from the conventional way of how we understand secondhand sales to swap?
Yeah. So when I came to Japan, I did attend some swap events here and there, and that whole concept really appealed to me because so I think in Japan also so another sort of layer to it is that as an expat myself in Japan, sometimes I find that the clothes that uh, you know are available in store, they tend to be very tailored to like the Japanese kind of style and the Japanese kind of body type as well. So I think this is something that a lot of expats experience in Tokyo and in Japan, where you can't really find something that is it's it doesn't really feel right. So I think it's a combination of those things, and also the fact that in Japan, spaces are really, like a real luxury, and disposal is really hard. So, there's a whole very elaborate system of like, how you dispose stuff. So, which is, I mean, because they segregate, garbage in a very systematic way. So, all that put together, I just thought that, this would be a great new format for people to also, get to know each other, even not just in the expat community, but in general, people living in Tokyo. So this is the way for them to kind of get to know each other. Yeah, and the other thing is that what really triggered it was last year. We were all sort of isolated, just sitting at home. And for me personally, also like I hadn't really made. I didn't have the chance to make any friends because I just moved into this new city and new country. So, and I was just about making friends at work. My sort of full-time work, but this the lockdown happened and all of that. So this was really, so I just thought, okay, why don't I start an Instagram thing and just and see how it goes. And I started off by just posting pictures of me wearing thrifted clothes or whatever, and then I slowly got to know that there is this whole swap community, and I decided to actually build a community. And then so actually when I started doing that, I met CC and Kat from the organization called Sustainable Living Tokyo, and that's when it really started. So that's when it really took off. And so we were both, we had the goal of having these swap events and things like that. So together with them, I sort of started having the swap events.
Nice. And was it something that you just found your love for secondhand in Tokyo, or you've always been a lover of secondhand back in India?
So it's actually a relatively new thing. I think I was a love of affordable fashion for sure. It's in India that was in the form of online shopping, like e-commerce, because everything was so easily accessible. And I personally also like to kind of for me, fashion is about feeling a little bit upbeat, and like you're starting your day on a good note kind of thing,
Right.
and expressing your identity. So I kept buying stuff regularly, but then I realized that has a really negative environmental impact, and I started reading more about that. So I feel like swap is a good way to still be able to do that and still kind of switch your wardrobe every now and then, but do it in a sustainable way.
Right. And can you take us through during your first swap event? How was it like?
So actually, the very first swap event was online because this was during the lockdown, and we couldn't actually hold a physical swap event. So we tried one online. We experimented with some stuff, on Facebook and everything. And so it was a small group of 8 people, and but we were actually pleasantly surprised, with the kind of response that we got even then. And just especially in that time, I think it was very important for people to see each other, and just see that there are other people out there, and who have a shared passion for this. So I think the fact that it was able to connect some people was really fulfilling. So it started with an online version, and then we all met up in person later on. So it was like, I made some new friends, we all kind of met each other, and that's how it really started.
Amazing. And I'm guessing that if you organize a swap event from in India or in Japan, it's gonna be super different. And what made you think that the whole concept of swapping is highly accepted in Japan as compared to India? What do you think are like the differences?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think in Japan, like you said, I think Japan is one of the markets where thrift is huge. Every corner, everywhere you go. In fact, it's such a coincidence, but it so happened that the place that I found my home in Tokyo happens to be a thrift hub. So yeah, so that was really exciting. And I got to go around. And so I mean, it's I mean, quite close to where I stay, there are a lot of thrift stores, and of course there are different thrift hubs like that in Tokyo. And I think thrifting as a concept is very well established here. And also, maybe some of these reasons might be contributing to it. The fact that people want to give away stuff, they don't want to keep a lot of stuff in their homes because there's no space, and at the same time, there is also that kind of like hipster culture, where like you vintage and secondhand is considered aspirational. And so and actually it may even the fact that it's more accepted may even tie back to something that is fundamentally Japanese, which is this culture of, or this concept of mottainai, which in Japan means the regret of waste.
Mm,
So that is something that, even from ancient, like the Edo period in Japan, it was something that everyone did not. So it's not really something that's new. It's something that it's very deeply rooted in the culture.
Mhm.
So for instance, like, a woman would wear her, use her kimono for about, 20 years, or and then when it couldn't be used anymore, like, she would try to keep mending it. When
Right.
it couldn't be used anymore, she would use the rags for something else, for cleaning or whatever.
Mhm.
Or she would, even then, if even the rags couldn't be used, she would use that as to burn, for firewood and things like that. So it's really kind of rooted in the culture.
I think the big difference in the secondhand culture of Japan, as you just have mentioned, it's deeply rooted to their heritage, or that's the common practice that they have been doing. And what do you think are some of the lessons that we can learn from these practices, especially countries in Asia that perceive secondhand as not as we're not as open as Japan, as Japanese, because it's not part of like how we are trained or how we can consume fashion. And now, yes, secondhand is becoming more popular and common to everyone because there's a hipster movement that is going on, and it's cool now to thrift. But do you think we will surpass this trend and be able to really implement this kind of lifestyle as part in our daily life and not just like a trend?
Yeah. Definitely. I think one thing is that Japan is probably more in touch with its traditional side. Maybe so. I don't think that I think it's fundamentally Asian. The kind of concept of saving and passing on, and I think that transcends through Asia, and it even in India. I mean, we never really throw away our clothes. You typically pass it on to your family or relatives, whatever. So I feel like that is fundamentally Asian, but probably Japan is it's an interesting place because it's this it's where modernity and tradition coexist. So I feel like maybe they're more in touch with their traditional side. So maybe if we can sort of bring that back even in other Asian countries, uh, because it's something that already exists really, so it's about just bringing it back. I think that could be something. It could be a way forward.
Right. And I'm guessing with all the swaps events that you've organized, you will have different challenges as compared to what we've experienced. Like for us, one of the many things that we have encountered is really trying to address the concern of like hygiene and the cultural beliefs of purchasing or using secondhand. Was it the same thing when you organized the swap? Was there a barrier for them to embrace that swapping culture?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because here I feel like the barrier is less, so because, and especially because people who come to our swap are people who, they thrift already. So I think the idea of using secondhand clothes isn't necessarily, a barrier to them. Of course, that is a small kind of segment of the population. And of course, there are always people who are not okay with that. But I think within that sort of thrift community, I feel like swap is a nice, alternative to thrifting as well.
Right. And what are like the common challenges that you face since you have like a dress or like someone who thrift or swaps don't have this concern already? What are the common challenges that you've faced?
Hmm. So I think I think this is something, and so as I think on your other podcast also, like people had pointed this out. The People really want to give away their stuff, right? So we sometimes we end up with too much,
Mm.
so, and the whole idea is to kind of minimize waste. So then we sort of encourage people to or we kind of you know, I mean, make like entry, I mean, a fee according to kind of whether they want to bring in stuff or whether they want to take back stuff and things like that. So try to minimize the waste in that sense. Um, but we try to encourage people to I mean, we say it's definitely not a dumping ground for stuffs, so to bring in stuff that they know that people will like. And or the I think someone in our community said this, bring in stuff that you would give to a friend. You could use that principle and bring in something. And sometimes, and the thing is, in Japan there's also seasons, right? 4 seasons. So sometimes, if you bring in uh, a summer kind of crop top or whatever in winter, I mean, it doesn't work because so we encourage people to bring in seasonal clothes as well.
Right. And what are some of your favorite stories during like swap events or the conversations that you have with the community?
So I think it's really special when they take a picture of themselves in their clothes and then they post it on Instagram and stuff, and then someone else says, oh, that was my top, and I think that that's really special. Even during the event, and this is something I think universally in swap, I really like when so we usually have a trial room, and then they wear the clothes and then people compliment them and say that looks really nice. And so there's definitely a personal touch to this. Also, sometimes we encourage them to kind of leave little notes along with their clothes, saying, this came all the way from Australia, or like,
True.
this was a gift from someone, or all of that stuff. So I think that adds a kind of personal touch to it. So that's really special.
Nice. Do
Mm.
you think with all what's happening in the swap movement that it's becoming more popular and common to everyone, do you think at least in Tokyo or in Japan, is it going to be considered another way of consuming or acquiring clothes as compared to the traditional way of just thrifting? Or do you think this is just going to be a trend?
Mm. Yeah. So um, I think definitely swap and thrifting will coexist. And I mean, in general, not specific to Japan, but in general, so I'm sure you've seen, the ThreadUp report and thing, which says that thrifting in general, like as a broad group,
Mhm.
will probably be twice the size of fast fashion in 2029. So I don't, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that seems like a lot. I don't know to what extent to believe that number, but definitely, I think there's a trend in that direction, as people are becoming, especially young people. So in Japan as well, a lot of young people. So we have this. There is this group called, by the Waseda University students. They also kind of started a thrift community.
Wow.
So I think especially young people, there's a big trend in this direction. Um, and so I do expect it to continue, especially when uh, the format is somehow made easier. I think right now there's still that, like, okay, like you have to go to the event and you have to exchange and stuff. So I mean, I feel like when it's made a little bit easier and more convenient, I do definitely see this really taking up. I mean, really growing, because you see secondhand brands like, for example, Mercari, which is a big secondhand site in Japan. It's really doing well, really, growing very fast. So I do expect this to grow as well.
So if you do go back to India, do you think you will bring the whole swap concept to India?
So, so yeah, that depends if I do go back to India or not. But
Yep.
if I do, like, yeah, hypothetically, um, uh, so I think, yeah, definitely. I think wherever I am, to be honest, wherever I am, you know, wherever I go, I would like to, take the swap uh, kind of community with me, and take swap to, wherever I can, as well. So because I think it's something that is universally, applicable, universally relevant, and of course, climate change and sustainability is it. I mean, is something that is for everyone, really. So, and fashion is for everyone, right? So I think I would take it wherever I go. Yeah.
Totally agree, and I'm happy to hear that. So, my last question is, what do you think is the power of swapping to you?
Okay. This power swapping, I think, to me is about it's about bringing people together, um, with a shared ownership of things. So, yeah, that's how I would summarize it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dia, for sharing your stories and how you've built the swapping community in Tokyo. And we are excited to see more of what you will be doing. And even if you will not be staying in Tokyo, we are rest assured that you will continue what you've started. And thank you again for taking the time. And for everyone who tuned in, thanks again also for listening. And we will see you on our next episode.